Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Do I have a tale for you today when it comes to what's been going on in the Chinese community of War Thunder? Now, some of you guys may not be frequented with the Chinese community of War Thunder, but it is quite big. There's a large community there. Obviously, you have the server, which is run in China, but you also have a lot of them playing on the international server who don't necessarily live in China itself. And today we're going to go through one of the more hilarious things that I've read over the last few months when it comes to one of their coordinators, basically the information coordinator, or what they call the data officer, an individual called Saint HH, which is very fun. I'm going to call them Saint just to make this easier. Now, I do want to thank Scrooge for bringing this information to my attention, for me to read through everything. I also want to thank Alex, Rocker, and many others for helping me get through this information and be able to understand a lot of it, because obviously it's all in Chinese, including all of the videos. We even found a Chinese version of tech that seems to be very similar to what I do, apart from China. So it's been all over the place trying to understand what has been going on in that part of War Thunder. And basically, what you have to understand, as a quick TLDW, I suppose, there was a data officer that was in place who gave information to Gaijin. This information was used to, basically as historical ideas to build the vehicles in the game. He was let go because of the fact that he wasn't doing his job properly. And in the video now, let's go through why that was happening and also how ridiculous this whole thing is. The spark of this, though, is actually coming from a community poll. Basically, there was a post on the forum War Thunder, and I will leave some links in the description for you guys to read through. This basically was a poll to say, do you want to get rid of the data officer themselves? It was, are you satisfied with the information staff of the Chinese department? And for satisfied, there was 40, and for dissatisfied, there was 3,275, which equals about 99%. So you can see there was a lot of dissatisfaction when it came to what was going on. And in this video, we'll explore why that was the case. But as a ending statement to the whole thing, this was posted earlier this month by Akiyama Seiran, because everybody's a weeb, the Chinese community coordinator. The post reads, "Dear players, first of all, I would like to say thank you to all the players who actively participated in this discussion. I hereby announce that the data officer involved is no longer cooperating with us, and we thank him for his long-term work. Our efforts to continue developing and adding more vehicles to the Chinese tech tree will proceed as planned. The development process will not be affected. Secondly, we would like to point out that in the process of developing vehicles, the decision of which vehicles to make and add to the game has always belonged to the developers, and the job of the historical consultant is to help the developers and provide reference material. Finally, we hope that more players can actively participate in the discussion on the forum, and we will do our best to provide a fair platform for players to communicate. Not only that, but Gaijin staff can chat more directly with players on the forums. On behalf of Gaijin, I would like to apologize for the inconvenience this incident has caused the players. At the same time, I would like to thank the players who participated in the discussion and made reasonable suggestions. The developers have received feedback from players. Regards, the Chinese community manager." Yeah, you can apologize all you want. Maybe you should vet who you're getting information from first. Maybe that's the idea. But anyway, let's get into this story. Now, to give you an idea of where these ideas of historical consultants come from, basically when it comes to Gaijin, they work with individuals from different countries to be able to provide them historical data for vehicles so they can match them to what they are in the game. This is to try and make vehicles as realistic as possible and also to make them as historically as possible. So the idea is, even before having to, bug report certain issues with vehicles, they would be able they would be able to try and create a realistic experience as much as they could. Now, I've talked to a few of these guys who actually work in different parts of the game. They have consultants from all over the world, basically focusing on different parts of the game, and generally it comes down to 1 or 2 or maybe 3 voices which give information, and then they have a team under them who usually are a volunteer force to be able to feed them information. That is basically what has happened here when it comes to Saint. There was Saint, who was the, let's call him, historical coordinator. Then there was a team under him who was feeding information up. But one of the problems was that it seems that our boy Saint was not doing his job. And a lot of the information that was being fed upwards was not being passed on by him. And it seems like there are a few factors to why that wasn't happening overall. So the team itself that was under him became very dissatisfied with what was going on with him, and therefore they started speaking out, they started talking publicly, and there's a lot of he said, she said around the place, basically saying, oh, well, we gave him all the information, but it didn't matter, he didn't pass it, there was no point, there's a lot of that stuff. But it basically seemed like the vehicles being added to the top tier for China didn't make a lot of sense stat-wise to a lot of these people, because even though a lot of the information is still classified, especially for certain vehicles, it basically means that they were way off even the estimations that people have made in books, people have made in documents, outside of the realm of classification. And it turns out the reason for this is because the information was being neutered by Saint himself, and a lot of the information was not being passed on. The reason he said that he didn't pass on a lot of this information, or the reason why he couldn't pass on a lot of this information, is that he was told personally that if this information got out, it was deemed classified, and therefore people could face jail time or even a fine for leaking this classified information, especially to a foreign organization in the form of Gaijin themselves. But there was a problem with this, and this was noted by a lot of individuals, and we'll call this the PGZ-09 incident. Now, the PGZ-09 was added to the game, and it was given exactly the same stats of the standard Gepard when it came to its 35mm. Everything was basically the same, all down to the gun depression itself. And surprisingly, what happened to the PGZ-09 was, even though it's a very modern vehicle, remember the previous point about leaking classified information, including jail time and also a fine, miraculously the PGZ-09, its gun depression changed from this -10 to -2, which supposedly, by Saint, he found in a book. So, this is an issue, because he said that passing on this information was, leaking classified info, which can lead to fines, which can lead to jail time, but here is him doing it, obviously not ending up in those things, and using a verified source to be able to do this for something that he wanted, right? And because of that fact, this meant that the sources could be used, or he wasn't worried about the jail time or the fine that he previously talked about to be able to dismiss a bunch of other people's thoughts when it came to these vehicles. So a bunch of questions arose why he couldn't do this for other vehicles. Why couldn't it happen for, the ZTZ 96 or 99 series, for example? Why couldn't it happen for aviation vehicles when it came to a bunch of stuff? And then came out a bunch of threats from Saint, basically saying some ridiculous stuff, such as, without me, there is no Chinese helicopter tree. You basically have to kowtow to me to be able to get what you want. And he talked about being able to control everything. He talked about being kind of the final switch on the button, to be able to add in vehicles. There was a bunch of posts from him which just sounded nuts at the end of the day. Basically, the delusion of grandeur had got to his head at this point. And after the PGZ-09 incident, people started questioning what is this guy actually doing, and can we actually just do stuff without him, and is he actually benefiting the game? Because beforehand, a few years ago before this point, he was actually pretty good with a lot of the original information, because they weren't dealing with more modern vehicles. But now they are dealing with more modern vehicles. It kind of all went up, the creek, unfortunately. And then he talked about, not being able to be removed because he was untouchable. Nobody had the information that he had. The classic evil trope. Oh, you can't stop me, I'm untouchable. Then gets shot in the head. That's basically what happened. So after making a ton of these statements over the years, he was let go. And peace, bye, see you later. And then the day after he was fired, the buffs started rolling in for certain vehicles, because finally the valve had been opened, and now a bunch of sources could get through to be able to actually change some of these vehicles. So for example, the PL5 missile got a buff. It went from 20G overload to 30G overload. Also at the same time, we talked about yesterday the sights for the ZTZ-96 and the 99, the thermal changes to those vehicles as well, and also some changes to stuff like the ZLT, which will probably come in the future as well. All of this information could have been used before, but because of this guy putting himself as a barrier between the general, finders and the War Thunder itself, this information didn't get through. So hopefully now, with this guy out of the picture, what will end up happening is there will be a bunch of changes to China. There already has been, and a lot of the newer vehicles will not be realistic because a lot of them are still classified, but they'll be a little bit more close in the guesstimation. And this is a good tale to show that trusting in one person who might be insane to be able to deal with a ton of information overall and kind of be the judge, jury, and executioner, at least in their own head, to be able to do that with this stuff can be super dangerous when it comes to the game. What I found a lot of the times, especially when it comes to War Thunder and many other games and any online platform in general, power goes to people's heads super quickly when it comes to moderation and when it comes to even technical data. So you've got to be super careful of people who are in those positions, and they need somebody to be able to answer to. And luckily this time he was able to answer, he was being forced to answer to the community. And there's also a huge side thing which is going on with the same thing as well. Now, this is like maybe 10-15% of it, but I'm not entirely sure how much this is actually true. But I'll leave it as an ending note because I thought it was a little bit ridiculous. But basically, there seems to be some kind of ties between Saint and, of course, the nationalist side of China, the good old Taiwanese. So there's an idea going around when it comes to the general Chinese player base that because of his roots from Taiwan, or because of his beliefs in what China should be, this is why he didn't feed a lot of the information and wanted the standard Chinese vehicles to look worse because of this fact. Now, I don't think this is true, and I think it's people going a little bit too far, but it is kind of fun to think about as well. This whole thing has been an absolute mess, but the main thing to understand is the fact that it is solved now, and it is thanks to the community that it's solved. Because for some reason, this guy wasn't caught before this point by Gaijin or by any of the people who are put in positions of power on the forums or in these roles. It is absolutely ridiculous that they've all failed at their jobs, and it came down to the community to be able to fix this. That is a showing of a problem with the system, and maybe it might be worth looking at it. And also now, hopefully, we can have scrutiny on all of the other people who do this job as well, because there are many of them are great. Some of them not so good, as I've met and talked to. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugen's Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.